To survive the Black Death, you first have to understand the cruelest part. While you are living through it, it does not feel like legend. It feels like ordinary life turning into a trap. The market, the doorway, the shared cup, the crowded bed, the handrail slick with rain and use, the cough you would have ignored a month ago. All of it now carries risk. Nobody announces that the world has changed. You feel it in the small humiliations of fear. Merchants handling scales more carefully, mothers pulling children closer, priests hiding their faces behind herbs, neighbors lowering their voices when they say the next parish has gone quiet. And if you are poor, the plague reaches you through the very things you cannot escape. You sleep in a room that never fully dries, on straw that smells of dust, sweat, and old winters. You live by closeness, shared beds, shared bowls, shared labor, shared breath. The habits that make survival possible in an ordinary season become the habits that may carry death to your door. There is no private refuge waiting beyond the gates, no country estate, no sealed cellar full of grain. The rich can buy distance. You cannot. To keep eating, you still have to stand in line, scrub, carry, bargain, and hope the person beside you is not already dragging the plague into your day. The rich hear the same bells you hear, but their fear looks different. It looks like trunks, carts, horses, linen servants, and the luxury of leaving early. Yours looks like wet straw, stale bread, bad air, and another day spent breathing too close to strangers. They vanish toward cleaner roads and wider rooms, carrying comfort with them. Behind them, they leave a city that suddenly feels honest about how little the poor were ever protected. Their shutters close. Their tables go quiet. Their perfume and candlelight disappear into the countryside while you remain where the drains overflow and the alleys trap every smell. Surviving the plague is not just about avoiding sickness. It is about learning, in the ugliest possible way, which lives have options and which lives are told to endure. At first, nobody around you can explain what is happening with any confidence. One man swears it rises from foul air off the river. Another blames distant stars. A woman hangs rosemary by the door. Someone burns pitch until the room fills with bitter smoke that scratches your throat and stings your eyes. People pray harder, wash more when they can, or almost not at all when water itself feels suspect. Some carry charms, some drink vinegar. Some insist the danger has already passed long before it truly arrives. Not knowing is its own form of terror. When the threat has no clear shape, every habit becomes a gamble, and every superstition starts to sound almost reasonable. Then the city begins to loosen at the joints. A house goes quiet. A workshop fails to open. Bread arrives late because the baker's boys have not returned. Church bells ring at the wrong hours, then at all hours, until they stop sounding like separate events and become the background noise of the season. The city does not collapse in one crash. It sags piece by piece. A porter fails to show. A seamstress disappears. A carter refuses a route. An inn locks its door. Business slows, then stumbles, then lurches on in strange bursts because hunger does not wait for fear to finish speaking. Even with death nearby, people still need flour, wood, lamp oil, and news. To survive, you become a reader of tiny signs. You notice who looks flushed even in cool weather, who pauses halfway through a sentence to catch breath, who leaves food untouched, who seems suddenly wrapped in more cloth than the weather requires. You learn to watch doorways before you approach them. You learn which streets feel crowded in the wrong way and which homes smell too sharply of smoke, vinegar, or sickroom herbs. You begin to measure distance with your nerves rather than your feet. The butcher's lane might be faster, but the narrow turn by the old wall gives you more space. You start walking like a hunted person, not because someone is chasing you, but because danger now hides in ordinary errands. The worst part is that survival does not look heroic while you are living it. It looks petty, frightened, and exhausting. It looks like skipping a visit to someone you love because their household has gone quiet. It looks like pretending not to hear a knock after dark. It looks like keeping your hands inside your sleeves and turning your face away in crowded places. It looks like counting coins twice before buying stale bread, because if work stops tomorrow, what you spend today may decide whether you eat later in the week. History remembers huge numbers. You remember whether the person beside you seemed warm, whether the cup was rinsed, whether the room had enough air. Food becomes its own kind of panic. In a healthy year, you worry about prices. In a plague year, you worry whether the supply will arrive at all. Markets thin out, then swell suddenly when desperate sellers unload what they can before fleeing or falling ill. Fish spoils. Milk turns quickly. Bread grows coarser as flour worsens. You chew food that tastes of smoke, grit, and hurry because careful preparation belongs to calmer times. Sometimes the city feels both crowded and empty at once. Fewer hands working, more people scrambling, and all of them with the same terrified question beneath every purchase. Not what tastes good. Not what is fair. Only what will last. The body becomes a source of betrayal. Every ache now carries meaning. If you wake with heat in your forehead, your heart starts racing before your feet touch the floor. If your stomach turns, you replay yesterday's meal. If your legs feel weak, you wonder whether it is labor, hunger, bad sleep, or the first whisper of something worse. People around you do the same. A healthy face at dawn can look haunted by dusk. A laborer can vanish from the lane between one market day and the next. There is no stable line between safe and doom that you can see with your own eyes. Survival means waking each day into a negotiation with uncertainty. And still, the city keeps demanding that you live like nothing has changed. Rent is still owed. Debts are still remembered. Fires still need fuel. Clothes still tear. Children still cry from hunger at exactly the same volume they did before the plague. The cruelty of it is almost absurd. Catastrophe does not erase ordinary need. It lays itself on top of it. So you haul water with a scarf tied over your mouth. You scrub bowls while listening for the bells. You carry sacks past shuttered windows. You try to earn enough to last the week while wondering whether there will even be a normal week again. Survival becomes part labor, part fear, and part stubborn refusal to stop moving. Religion fills the streets in a different way now. Some people become quieter, more inward, more desperate in their prayers. Others turn public and theatrical, flooding lanes with chants, candles, relics, and pleas for mercy. The smell of wax mixes with sweat, damp wool, and the sour edge of overcrowded bodies. The sound of prayer can comfort you for a moment, then frighten you the next, because it means many frightened people are gathering in one place and breathing the same air. Even faith becomes double-edged. You want protection, meaning forgiveness, and explanation. But you also want space, and in a plague city, space is a privilege that often costs more than devotion can buy. What makes survival especially brutal is isolation without privacy. You are rarely alone, yet increasingly cut off. Friends stop visiting. Neighbors speak through doors. Families divide a room with silence heavier than sleep. Every relationship is strained by suspicion that nobody wants to confess aloud. If your brother coughs, you feel guilt for noticing. If your mother looks tired, you count how many times she sat down that morning. Affection becomes tangled with caution. You begin to hate what fear does to you. It teaches you to hesitate before helping, to calculate before comforting, to weigh love against risk like a merchant at a stall. Even when you survive, that lesson leaves a mark. The street itself changes character. Familiar corners become loaded with memory. The alley where children used to shout now carries only dripping water and the scrape of hurried footsteps. A doorway once crowded with gossip becomes a place people avoid without discussing why. Windows stay shut longer. Smoke hangs lower. Carts sound harsher over the stones because there is less chatter to soften them. The city loses its casual noise. It becomes a place of listening. Listening for bells, for wheels, for coughing through walls, for the wrong kind of stillness. When people say medieval cities were dirty, they often miss the deeper truth. Dirt is survivable. It is dread that remakes a place into something almost unrecognizable. You also learn how thin authority really is. Officials can order streets cleaned, watches posted, movement restricted, prayers organized. But orders only matter if enough healthy people remain to carry them out. Sometimes rules appear suddenly and vanish just as fast. Sometimes they are enforced harshly in one district and ignored in another. Sometimes fear outruns law entirely. Families hide illness. Employers conceal losses. Workers disappear. Rumors move faster than any proclamation. In theory, the city governs itself. In practice, during plague, it feels like everyone is improvising with trembling hands. Surviving means navigating not only sickness, but confusion, inconsistency, and the collapse of trust in every level of daily life. If you are lucky, you avoid the worst houses. If you are unlucky, work drags you straight to them. Maybe you carry water to a home nobody else will enter. Maybe you deliver bread and leave it on a step, backing away before the door fully opens. Maybe you are paid to move goods from a workshop whose owner has vanished. You tell yourself you have no choice, and often you do not. Hunger keeps forcing decisions that caution would reject. This is one of the most merciless parts of the Black Death for ordinary people. The wealthy can choose distance. You often have to choose between danger now and hunger later, and neither feels survivable for long. Children make the whole thing harder to bear. They do not understand why the lane is quieter, why play is forbidden, why adults flinch at small sounds, why faces look older within a single month. They ask where people went. They ask why church bells keep ringing. They ask why bread tastes different. You answer badly because there are no good answers. If you have younger siblings or children of your own, your fear sharpens into something more humiliating: helplessness. You cannot promise safety. You cannot explain the rules because there are no reliable rules. You can only wash what you can, share what you have, and pray that tomorrow arrives without choosing your door. Then comes the cruelest rhythm of all. The days when you think the danger has passed. A few more stalls reopen. A familiar face returns. Somebody laughs too loudly in the market, and for one bright second the city feels almost embarrassed by how frightened it has been. Then another wave of rumors comes in from a neighboring parish. Another household closes up. Another bell rings at dawn, and the little spark of normal life goes cold again. Survival destroys your sense of time. Weeks blur. Relief feels foolish. Fear becomes ordinary. You stop asking when it will end and start asking what kind of person you will be if it does. There is no medicine waiting just beyond your reach. That may be the most frightening truth of all. You do not survive because a doctor finally arrives with an answer. You survive, if you survive, through a mixture of chance, caution, distance, timing, and endurance. Medieval medicine can offer comfort, routine, and the authority of someone trying, but not certainty. So the burden falls back onto ordinary decisions: where you walk, whom you visit, what you touch, how long you linger, whether you spend the coin on food or save it in case work vanishes tomorrow. Survival is not a grand victory. It is 1,000 small choices made inside a world that no longer feels dependable. And if illness does enter your home, time changes again. The room seems smaller. The air turns heavier. Every object becomes part of the crisis. The cup, the blanket, the stool by the bed, the bucket in the corner, the rag in your hand, the candle burning too low because wax costs money you do not have. You move carefully, speak softly, and listen constantly. Hope rises and falls hour by hour. A quiet moment feels like rescue. A restless moment feels like judgment. Even without describing anything dramatic, the pressure is enough to hollow you out. You begin to understand that plague is not only a disease, it is a siege laid against the mind. Yet the story of survival is not only despair. The strange truth is that even during catastrophe, people continue to help each other in ordinary, stubborn ways. Someone leaves soup by a threshold. Someone shares firewood. Someone watches a child while a parent runs to market. A neighbor who was once only a face across the lane becomes the person who tells you which streets to avoid. Human beings do not stop being human just because fear is sensible. Compassion becomes quieter, less theatrical, more practical. It lives in small gestures performed quickly and without speeches. In a season ruled by dread, these acts feel almost revolutionary. As the worst stretches on, labor begins to change value. Too many hands are gone. Fields need workers. Workshops need apprentices. Carters, masons, servants, and porters are no longer so easily replaced. For the poor, this shift is not immediate salvation. Grief comes first. Exhaustion comes first. But eventually, surviving the plague can place you inside a world where your labor counts differently than it did before. Wages may rise, demands may harden. The people who endured the filth, smoke, hunger, and terror sometimes discover that scarcity gives them a bargaining power they never possessed in healthier years. Even catastrophe can crack old hierarchies, though never cleanly and never kindly. Still, survival has a cost no account book can measure. You remember names nobody else says anymore. You remember which houses went dark first. You remember the smell of vinegar on cloth, the sight of half-empty markets, the way every stranger seemed to carry a question you could not afford to answer. Long after the bells fall quieter, your body keeps certain habits. You hesitate before entering crowded rooms. You notice coughs too quickly. You store food when you can. You distrust reassurance. The plague does not end neatly inside you just because the city decides to move on. Survival means carrying memory forward while everyone around you tries to sound normal again. This is why the Black Death feels so different from the dramatic versions shown later in paintings and stories. The true horror for most people is not constant spectacle. It is pressure. It is uncertainty. It is class difference sharpened into cruelty. It is having no safe distance, no private refuge, no reliable explanation, and no guarantee that obedience, prayer, hard work, or decency will protect you. It is hearing that the wealthy have escaped to cleaner places while you tighten your scarf and step back into a street that smells of rain, refuse, smoke, and fear. The plague strips away illusion. It shows exactly how fragile ordinary life has always been. So what was it actually like to survive the Black Death? It was not a tale of fearless endurance. It was waking each morning into dread and choosing movement anyway. It was hunger arguing with caution, love arguing with fear, and routine arguing with catastrophe. It was watching a medieval city reveal its hidden machinery. Who labored, who fled, who was left exposed, who could purchase distance, and who had to gamble with breath just to make it to the next day. To survive was not to remain untouched. It was to be altered permanently by the knowledge that civilization is held together by vulnerable people in narrow rooms trying very hard not to be abandoned. And when the season finally loosens its grip, the victory feels quieter than you imagined. There is no triumphant music, no clean ending, no return to the person you were before the first rumor drifted in from the docks. There is only another morning, a little less crowded with bells, a little more light in the market, a little less terror in the faces around you. You are still poor, still tired, still marked by what you have seen. But you are there. In an age that offered no certainty, that was survival. Not glory, not purity, not safety, but endurance in the middle of filth, fear, and a world that learned far too late how much it depended on the people with nowhere else to go.